It's quiet. Too quiet. This is a T-55, the first true Soviet main battle tank. This machine is the most numerous tank in the history of warfare, its brothers and sisters numbering somewhere around 100,000. For its day, this machine was at the bleeding edge of military technology, well enough armed and armoured to be considered a serious concern to the Western powers. Of course, this was in the late 1940s. It is 2008. Now, this is a burning metal coffin for 4. The quiet is broken, and very suddenly, it is a bad day to be a T-55. Oh, did he live? You can actually see the hole in the back that the shell came out of after passing right through him. Never mind. Who did that? It's very early in the morning, and the sun is still down. In the darkness, the offending party appears only as an angry cloud of smoke. Nearby, creatures of the night push meticulously onwards. Slowly. This is an Abrams tank, designed in the 1980s, and having received meticulous updates ever since. The chassis is aging, but the technology on top of it is state-of-the-art. Developed in the deepest pits of hell, this machine is powered by human suffering. It sees in the dark, and it can sense your fear. Marvin crest the berm. Abrams are pack hunters. An Abrams 120mm gun is accurate beyond 3,000 meters, and can launch APF-SDS depleted Hellfire-tipped missiles capable of punching holes through even modern armor. The T-55s don't even stand a chance. In fact, during the offline missions I played before this one, I've seen them go through multiple tanks in a line. Against infantry targets, their heat shells will go right through the wall you're cowering behind, maiming and burning everyone within a considerable radius. The light from the burning tank wrecks illuminates a network of bunkers, and similar vengeance is wrought upon them. Even the wounded and the desperate who claw their way from the burning wrecks are further persecuted. Beasts from hell, and Abrams itself is almost impervious to mortal harm. There are 3 ways to kill this beast, and 3 ways only. First, you use an anti-tank guided missile. Abrams are more well suited than most armoured vehicles to receive or evade such a missile, but these are devices with a singular purpose: a divine light to ward off this darkness. Failing that, you're getting real close, and you shoot for the heart. The head is too well protected. Ideally, you do this from the side or rear, where the hide is less thick. If you want to see this in action, there are a lot of videos of similar situations coming out of Palestine right now. And if you want to know what Palestine is, it's the bit of land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. The third and final option is sand. Vehicles who are crossing unfortunate terrain have a chance to become bogged, and from there, the driver will either use his skill to deftly free the vehicle, or put his foot down like a maniac and ruin everything. Oh no. Don't you dare. In my experience, the striker is fairly prone to getting stuck, which is why I'm having them drive quite so slowly. Normally though, an Abrams can manage to remain above the sand. And this right here is extremely unfortunate. Losing one in the opening moments of the mission, hat filled with bloodlust and gut filled with high explosive shells, is a setback. Losing two would be a disaster. Oh, we're fine. As for the one that did get stuck, I made the men get out, and we'll use them as frontline infantry from here, as they have wronged me. All of the targets we know about are dead or on fire. The infernal engines, who aren't presently busy, move on to enacting their evil against suspected enemy positions. It's difficult to tell how effective this predictive fire might be, but if I was in one of those buildings, I would be extremely upset right now. If you don't know what a striker is, it's all the things here that aren't Abrams, or people, or exploded. These are infantry carrying vehicles. An unladen striker can house 9 Knights of Hell in addition to its 2 crew and a stockpile of weapons and ammunition. Alternatively, you can just put a really big gun on there. The base model strikers are armed with a 50 cal machine gun that can be fired remotely from inside the vehicle. Some of the ones here have automatic grenade launchers instead. Among the weapons of the damned, each striker contains a single Javelin anti-tank missile launcher and 2 missiles. These weapons will make short work of a T-55 at any distance, and I figure if I don't see any, they can always fire them at the buildings to really get the party started. Only a few small teams of men crest the berm, the rest still dormant in their strikers, letting the sounds of battle stir them into a blood frenzy. However, we can go no further. Alright, which one of you cowards popped smoke? I believe he spotted the one tank we shot earlier, the one that didn't go on fire. Another Abrams should be able to finish the job. Crush him. Just as you crush this little wall. Excellent. And now, we must wait. The road ahead is mined, along the gap in the berm. This is both mentioned in the mission briefing and marked out for you in-game, but I've turned such marks off, for immersion. The anti-tank mines will not impede infantry, but are powerful enough to destroy a striker, or cripple an Abrams. It's only a thin strip of mines keeping the forces of hell at bay, but presently, they have no effective solution to them. Never mind. It is 2008. The United Nations have invaded Syria. On the 19th of June, Task Force Thunder launched their assault, crossing into the country from the middle section of the border with Iraq. Other forces streamed in from the south and across the Turkish border. Still more landed on the Mediterranean coast. And thus, from 3 sides, did the combined weight of the West's military might bear down on the safe haven for its attackers. Are we certain we're not the attackers? The game is Combat Mission Shock Foce 2, a game made by and for war uncles. I have heard it said that theoretical military conflicts are essentially what men have instead of astrology, and I can't say they're wrong. The game uses a unique turn-based system, where orders are assigned at the onset of each new minute, and then played out in real time, by robots. A limited AI will react to changing situations by speeding up, slowing down, running away, intelligently engaging targets, or popping smoke for no reason. The games in the series are ludicrously expensive, difficult to get a handle on mechanically, and run like absolute shit. The effort made here was not to be a fun video game, but to be an accurate simulation of real-world combat. Real uncle shit. My first thought, when I first played this mission, was to use a squad of engineers to clear a path for the vehicles. However, this doesn't work. I gave them like 10 minutes of loitering in a minefield and they didn't even find the mines. Even if they had done, all they can really do is mark them, so friendly units won't try and pass through those specific tiles. Slowly. Clearing a minefield, in real-world combat, is a job that takes days or weeks, and we have an hour. However, I believe I've found a faster way. The falling mortar shells seem to cut a neat line through the minefield. Now, all we have to do is connect the dots. Slowly. The Abrams lead the way. Call me a softie, but should anything go wrong, the Abrams can take it. I want as many of these monsters to go back to their nasty little families as possible at the end of this. Progress is necessarily glacial, with only a few vehicles moving at a time. Any more than that and they'll all get confused and we'll have a weird little traffic jam on our hands. Or worse still, someone gets stuck in the craters and the guy behind tries to steer around him, right through the mines. I've seen it all before. Elsewhere, another pack of T-55s have entered the battlefield. Obsolete though they may be, a T-55's 100mm gun can easily take apart a Striker, though for one to threaten an Abrams, the planets would have to align. A perfect, close-range shot on an exposed side or rear hull. A major problem a T-55 has, though, is that from the inside of one, it's very difficult to spot anything but the inside of a T-55, while demons lurk in the darkness. They quickly realize their mistake, as one by one the vehicles are turned to fire. And this defeat comes not without retaliation. The report from one of the javelins lights up the night for but a moment, and a machine gunner in the large building gets an eye-blink glimpse of a very important head lurking across the way. Pretty much the first bullet to come back in our direction kills the commander of 1st Platoon. Oops. This insolence is momentarily dealt with, as the Abrams make it through the mines. At the same time, more shells start to fall, right on top of the enemy base. The next few turns are dedicated to making sure nobody gets so bold again. While that's happening, let me go on something of a tangent. The YouTube channel People Make Games recently made a video called The Games Behind Your Government's Next War. This is a channel I watch consistently, whose uploads I tend to click the moment I see them. Can't get enough of that stuff. The video in question is about wargaming, the most uncle form of gaming. It details how they were invited to play the secret wargames that the Department of Defense are playing behind closed doors, and how they made everybody feel a little bit weird. I wanted to talk about this for a few reasons. Firstly, I think it ties in perfectly with today's thesis. Secondly, I can talk about whatever I want and nobody can stop me. And thirdly, there's Combat Mission. The game in the video is Combat Mission Professional Edition, bears, which is a version of the game marketed as a software tool for military training, development, and research. It's currently used by the US Army and the UK Defence Science and Technology Laboratory. Here's an actual army uncle bragging about blowing up a church.
To hit in particular the church tower, which provides the highest point across the whole of the map actually, so I wanted to make sure we levelled that, which we did quite effectively.
The game adapted very easily to being a tool for military training instead of a game for hippies with pronouns to monologue over. Everything's basically there already, you just need to make new scenarios that the army are going to be happy with and keep all the killing tools up to date. No other system goes quite so painstakingly in depth with regards to simulating the spotting abilities of various units and their different optical devices within different lighting and environmental conditions, or tracking the exact position of thousands upon thousands of bullets in real time, whether in the air or otherwise, taking into account penetration, ricochets, and units retrieving weapons from downed comrades, or quantifying exactly how unhappy a Syrian infantryman who's just had 2 of his friends exploded by a 120mm shell might be. It is a natural fit. To paraphrase the video, nobody at the Deaf and Tech Lab seemed to understand that anything they were doing was weird and might make someone uncomfortable, and under the slightest scrutiny would retreat into a canned dialogue about it all being for defense, man. You gotta have defense. The video goes deep into the ethics of war games and the effect of having actual purveyors of war have money and backing in games in general. The indisputable most evil video game ever made is, after all, America's Army. A game developed by the actual United States Army and wheeled out to American high schools. That's neither here nor there, though. Games are being used to recruit for the military, and then to train those recruits how to more effectively murder human beings. But, on the other hand, don't you want to have people who know how to drive and shoot their tanks good when Putin comes knocking? You gotta have defense. The back third is about how maybe none of this matters anyway because war games might all just be rubbish. It's an alright video, but they were awful liberal about it.
So like, the well-trodden path to success for a YouTube video essayist is to tell you exactly how you should feel about something. So when the video ends, you are left with a sense of resolution. Maybe you even understand exactly who was wrong and who was right. But morally, I feel that I can't do that.
As the well-known moral arbiter of YouTube, I'm here to tell you who was wrong and who is right. If Combat Mission Shock Foce 2 had a D&D alignment, it would be lawful evil. Evil because we're going to the entire other side of the planet, as the most powerful military force on that planet, to launch a long-range defensive mission in someone else's house, waging a campaign of obscene destruction therein, strikingly similar to what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. Lawful, because once the US have blown everybody up, they're the ones who make all the rules. The video posits that as we are entering a new age of ecological disaster, human displacement, and resource scarcity, war is an unavoidable likelihood. In my mind, though, the following thought would be, as comfortable first world nations with large military forces outfitted with all the most modern and flashy weapons of murder, would we not necessarily be entering this new age of war as belligerents? Are we not the baddies? The 3 tanks moving closer, having worked the offending structure over thoroughly. The dismounted tank crew walks up alongside them, making engine sounds and miming a steering wheel. Nobody pops out to shoot them. We're bombing the back row of buildings now. The objectives are to evict all tenants from the big building and the row currently under fire, and to have at least some minions of hell in them when the mission timer expires. More points are awarded for committing more murders, and for keeping Satan's little helpers alive and corporeal. Tanks continue to stream in, but, I mean, you know. Yeah, that. A 3rd striker platoon arrives and heads for the breach. I believe this is all we're getting, but once the forces are amassed between tanks, machine guns, grenade launchers, bombs falling from the sky, and infantry small arms, we will have an overwhelming amount of firepower. The plan, then, is a simple one. Okay, not this plan. Not sure what this was about, actually. Honestly, I might have just liked the green and purple. The plan is to drive right at them. Head on. There's no real cover on the map, no terrain to maneuver around, so we'll have to make do with what we have, which is bullets. If we come at the building from dead in front of it, the view of the second line of defense will be obscured by the first. There are a lot of windows ahead of us, but we've pretty heavily saturated the top floors with high explosive, hopefully prompting anyone up there to move. The vast majority of the defending force should surely be on the ground floor, largely blocked by their own little wall, and in that case we'll have a gun for every window and some to spare. It's not as dumb as it sounds. Very quickly after the assault begins, a sniper team, who are on a fire a few bullets to check if anyone's awake order, begin to receive fire. And this turns out to be a horrifically bad idea on the part of the shooter. The strikers flowing drip by drip through the breach in the minefield are starting to arrive now, which is good. This also means they're beginning to enter RPG range though, which means a whole new hassle to deal with. Not even close, baby. The targets pop up piecemeal, as the Syrians are extremely suppressed. They get one shot and are drowned out in a barrage of return fire. None of their shots are accurate. Brutal. Where's he going? Very little of the fire is directed at known positions of mall holdouts. Most of them have their heads down, cowering in the rubble, praying for what good it'll do them. We won't know if we hit someone in these circumstances, but there's not a whole lot of area that hasn't been shot or exploded at this point. While a striker's gun can be fired from inside the vehicle, a little man has to pop out to reload every now and again. An opportunistic sniper could use this moment. In this case, he missed. There's a lot more going out than there is coming in though. The sun's rising now, but the daylight won't save anybody. The angry clouds draw nearer, along with the shapes of a dozen monsters skulking behind them in silhouette. An Abrams takes an RPG to the face, and this is the first hit they've yet scored on anything but the commander of 1st Platoon, but the impact only makes it angrier. The strikers draw dangerously near, close enough to begin releasing their deadly payload. The Abrams are all out of HE at this point, instead passing solid shells clean through the buildings, through anyone unlucky enough to be in the way, and out the other side. Lesser devils pour from the strikers. A squad of Syrian infantrymen realise their opportunity. Unlucky. The strikers keep popping smoke and reversing into each other. It is really annoying. It's possible they don't think they should be doing what they're doing right now. They probably don't like all the rockets. But the weapons are fired from shaking, wounded hands. They deal no damage. A few more tanks sneak into the battlefield in the confusion. This one goes unshot for a worrying amount of time. This one doesn't. The front ended up wider than I'd imagined, and the unholy invaders do take fire from the rearmost positions, but we have so many guns. They're easily suppressed. Hell's Knights tear forwards, issuing a bellowed challenge to any defenders still within the headquarters. And they quickly find out they're only mostly invincible. 2 go down and a third is wounded. Naturally, the toll is far worse for the Syrians. They're still fighting, but each time they pop up to fire, less of them get to duck back down again. Oh, that might have been that one tank. I want to play another clip from the Game People video, so I'm doing that right now.
On multiple occasions, stood in front of the projector, I made a comment to the room like, ooh, this is chilling. Because it was! I was seeing a video game, functionally a toy, and a kind of toy I've dedicated my life to, being used to assist in decision making regarding the scrambling of jets to conduct real life missions. Like it's fucking Ender's Game. And so I was saying things like, oh, this is weird. And what I was fishing for was someone in the room to validate my feelings and be like, yeah, I know, right? But instead, I was always met with silence.
There is something hauntingly beautiful about a late-stage combat mission map. The way the dust gathers in the air and smoke trails off to the heavens. The land is pockmarked by weapons of war. The living cower in the rubble and the dead lie where they fell, and every drop of blood has a tragic backstory. It's like a perfect painting of a corpse, except you can watch it predated on by fighting insects in real time, from any angle and distance, zooming in close enough to see each individual soldier's reaction to incoming fire, or far enough away that you're peering down over little icons on a board, explosions winking in and out in the distance, like candles in a breeze. Obviously, in terms of raw graphical fidelity, the game looks like something running on a PlayStation 2 with delusions of grandeur, but the attention made to certain tiny details pulls you in. Like the way it takes the sound of an explosion time to reach you, generally a lot more time than it does for the HEFSDS round to reach its target. It is harrowing here, and you feel like you've been through something. As the timer ticks down, and all the little stories of all the little soldiers move on towards their conclusion, each frame is emblazoned with a false profundity. Combat Mission Shock Foce 2 is a horror game. It's just not the traditionally fun kind of horror. It's not like, ooh, got ya. It's the horror of seeing purpose-built killing machines at work, rendered in meticulous detail, and knowing that in this case the monsters under the bed are real. An Abrams tank is a horrific thing, a beast from hell. An artillery barrage is a world-ending disaster. Do you ever think that there must have been a time once, maybe as far back as the first time man met man, when 2 different tribes of proto-human ape-men encountered each other, not knowing quite what they were looking at. Something themselves, but different. Us, but not us. In that moment, a choice had to be made, and they had to make it not knowing that it would be the defining point for all of human history. To react with compassion, or with fear. There was a time when all this hadn't been invented, when we were still choosing the colour and texture the world would go on to take, and at every turn we made the worst possible decision. This is the darkest timeline. The history of humanity is the history of warfare. This is the world. There will always be soldiers because there have always been soldiers, and there will always be an enemy because a soldier needs an enemy. The sun rose in the sky this morning. The world continued to turn. God is in his heaven, and all is right on earth. This is normal. So yeah, I get where Quincy's coming from. That must have sucked. In the last few turns, 3 more minor demons were brought low, as one of the RPGs finally found their mark. The casualties have been overwhelmingly in our favour, however. The building doesn't have a lot of walls left, and the interior is strewn with the dead and dying. The back row has been subjected to some direct fire and extremely heavy shelling, which has levelled a few of the buildings outright. At the front, our minions have begun to enter the building. They are quickly suppressed by the people behind them, who I've ordered to shoot up a particularly threatening wall. Luckily, they've still got the wherewithal to draw first on the Syrian infantryman who comes levitating through the roof. Excellent. All of the infantry contacts we can still see are trying to surrender, hoping in vain for the Dark Lord's mercy. Doesn't seem to be much left in them. We keep moving forwards, sweeping through the first building to stage an attack on the second, at which point... What? They were hiding in the... There weren't even walls that... How didn't anyone see... What?
Oh, ninjas.
Whatever. Let's just roll with it. The defenders have one trick left. Concealed inside the headquarters is the Syrian stealth force. An entire platoon of elite ninja warriors. The first of Hell's finest to step inside are met with a barrage of shuriken. Following that, the sound of dozens of katanas being pulled from their sheaths in unison. The close-range battle is a massacre on both sides. The ninja fight valiantly, but their effort is useless. Hell pays dearly for their lives, but one by one the men fall. They are, after all, mere mortals. And that was all they had. The opposition crumbles. 14 of the demons have been sent back to hell, and another 12 injured, almost all during the final minute. None of the vehicles have been damaged in any substantial way. The opposition have fared worse. That last ambush really was all they had. We didn't actually clear the objectives, but we didn't have to. They've given up the fight, guaranteeing us a total victory. While I survey the carnage here for a minute, let's debrief. So, I'm not like anti-wargaming. I wasn't suffering through all this to be high and mighty about it. I wanted to play it, and I enjoyed my time in command of the US Armed Forces, to be honest. According to Steam, I currently have 100 hours in Shock Foce 2. It's neat. Don't buy it though, it's too expensive. I'm anti-war pretty generally, but in terms of crunchy uncle games about military strategy, well, I'm too gay to ever become an official war uncle, I think. I don't fully know what the rules are, but I do tend to think the games are kinda neat, if not wildly expensive. Combat mission system where you stop and plan all your moves and then the game runs for a full, uninterruptible minute of real time is so good. You can never see all the things you'd want to. You never feel like you have enough information. And if something goes wrong, especially at the start of a minute when you're locked in, things can get real dramatic real fast. I'd love like an XCOM or something that played a little bit like this, but this is what I got. And that's, halfway there. As long as it's for the purposes of good old-fashioned uncle fun, and not as a training tool to teach ghouls how to blow up civilian weddings on the opposite end of the planet more effectively. While I'm a little embarrassed to sign up, I'm probably going to have a good time. Albeit I might start writing a sad poem in the middle of the game or something. War games are a proud uncle tradition. They come in many shapes and sizes. Many differing layers of complexity and crunch. Oh, you beat Dark Souls, have you? Play me at the campaign for North Africa, you fucking casual. Throughout the video, I depicted the US Marines as hideous creatures from the pit. Kind of berserk savages whose only joy in life comes from murdering children for oil. I didn't know what kinds of folks I was going to get in here, although, according to my analytics, almost all of them are American men, and so this was a deliberate choice to be as provocative as possible. I don't literally believe your army is Satan's minions, but I do believe they are a force for evil in this world, and will stand by that. If you ask would I extend that condemnation to their allies, such as the UK armed forces, the answer is yes. Fight me, the army. If nothing else, the hero worship the West, mostly the USA, affords its soldiers is actually sickening to me. This isn't a traditionally popular perspective, and thus is one that's worth voicing. Always worth subjecting people to new ideas, you know? And you can do with that what you will. And if you were offended, well, I didn't make this video for snowflakes, I'm afraid. This isn't a safe space for baby killers. I don't know if this was a great showcase of the game, though. I didn't really realize at the time, but in terms of strategy, I pretty much just right-clicked the HQ. I mean, it worked. There were a few casualties, but almost all of them were down to the thing at the end with the invisible man. I guess you can't see through one room inside a building into another, even if there are no walls in between. Knowing this, I'd have kept up the fire on the HQ and diverted troops to the row of buildings at the back, using that as a base of fire against the soldiers on the other side of the big building. I reckon I still had the time to do this. We were pretty quick once we got past the mines. Speaking of, I didn't show it off in the video, but I wanted to. It would have been really boring though. My traffic management, generally, and around the mines specifically, was perfect. I was so proud of me. When I said the thing about strikers bogging and others just driving into the mines to get past them, anyone who's played this knows what I meant. This is a very healthy fear, and it's more work than you'd think to stop them all bumping into each other in general. I actually didn't notice a striker bogging the whole mission. Only the 2 Abrams, which is wild because the strikers bog all the time in sand. At least we had a bunch of stuff to look at, and I got to show you a lot of cool, if slightly haunting, explosions. Finally, since you can't actually buy this game because it's too expensive, I'd like to recommend some uncles, in case you worry you might be interested in this kind of thing. This is for like my existing gang. If you found me through this video or whatever, you're gonna know them. They're way bigger channels than mine. Requin87 is a player of all kinds of crunchy uncle games, up to and including the World War II Combat Mission titles, and makes weirdly cozy content therein. Boy has a nice voice, and sometimes when I can't sleep, I stick on one of his playlists, which is really weird, because then I'm drifting off to sleep to like gun shooting and bombs exploding and things, but I mean, if it works. He's also on Twitch a lot these days, which is pretty cool. Hey, I'm over on there too. I think so far the YouTuber Guns-A-Lot has made the best content of anyone concerning Combat Mission. He really tells some stories over there. Uploads are rare enough that it actually took me a minute to re-find the channel, but when they happen, they're a treat. He tends to play as the Syrians in Shock Foce too, and it might be cool seeing all this from the other side, you know? He does also tend to lose. I'm not going to suggest Usually Hapless because he's like the guy. If you search the series, you've already found him, but, you know, there's kind of a reason for that. Boy makes good stuff. And that's it. That's all I had to say. Maybe I'll do the second mission sometime, you don't know. It's been a real long time since I last uploaded, and that's not because I've been working on this. I've got another thing coming soon. It's been a lot, and it's too long, so look forward to that. This was a side thing. I've got a few more bits and pieces in the works. I am still planning to get back to Pirates sometime. I've recorded the gameplay, I just need to do all the rest of it. Those have been getting a lot of new people in recently, so sorry if you're only here for Pirates. I do other worse things too. Alright, peace.